Well, I'm Charlie Phillips, and we grow a lot of clams, and it has been great having Katy down, and it's just teaching people what we do and how well you can have a business and still take care of the environment. Is just, that's why we do what we do.
Welcome to Katy on the Farm. We're here with Captain Charlie Phillips at Sapelo Sea Farms and Phillips Seafood. We're actually going to go out today and take a look at the clam beds and learn everything we can from Captain Charlie. Come on along. Captain Charlie, we had a great time last time we got together. We got to have a wonderful meal at the Fish Dock, your restaurant near Sapelo Island off the Georgia coast. Had some great conversation, and now I'm really excited. Tell me, what are we going to go out and do today?
All right, now we're going to go take the seed, take them out on the mud flats, roll them out, maybe get a little bit muddy, and I'm going to teach you how we grow clams, and we might even get a chance to look at how we harvest wild oysters.
All right, come on guys.
All right, Katy, this is where we are right here. We're on the Sapelo River, Point of Belleville. We're going to come out the river, and we're going to 4 Mile Island, and we've got all these mud flats around are planted with clams and or nursery seed. And then I've got another lease over here in Mud River it's a state lease, so we've got a lot of clams planted over there too. So, but this is, and those 3 rock piles I showed you are right over here. And then we call them 3 Sisters. That's just a local name for them. And again, I mean, if you find a rock in coastal Georgia, somebody brought it.
All right, well, let's get in a boat and go see the rock.
All right, let's go.
All right.
This is how we do it. All of the light green bags are stuff that we just put out. The other dark or brown bags have been out for 2 or 3 months. So once these get rolled out, we won't touch them for another 1.5 years.
Year and a half. Wow, there's a lot out here.
There's a lot out here.
Never been in a field like this.
It's a little wetter and muddier than most, I will admit, yes.
Yeah, we complain inland if it gets this wet in our fields, but yeah. Wow, that's really remarkable.
Each of those rolls has 6 bags, and each bag is stocked with roughly 1,000 clams, providing they measured them in their Dixie cup right.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't measure so good,
Yeah.
but it's an average of about 1,000 clams per bag.
And in a year and a half, you harvest.
And I'll lose some, so we may end up with a 60% yield. We may end up with an 80% yield or something. It's kind of like any other farming. Sometimes you've got things and your yield is better than others.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't have much control over it once you put it out. And but that's Sapelo Island right across from us. That's Blackbeard, and once you pass the point of Blackbeard, you're in the ocean. So we've got a lot of water flow through here. We've got some of the highest tides that you're going to have on the East Coast until you get to New England. Georgia, with its 100 miles of coast, I think it's got probably 30% of all the salt marsh on the East Coast. So we've got a lot of filtering abilities. We've got a lot of tide, and subsequently, we've just got a really good environment to do things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And but it is a lot of work.
Hi, I'm Katy Rogers. I hope you'll be right back after this message to join me.
Backroads Sports Television Network, the location to find rural high school sports. Go to our website today at backroadsports.tv.
So why buy local? Why make the effort to get up on a Saturday morning and go find producers in your area? It circulates a higher percentage of your money back through your community. It supports local jobs, local growers and farmers. It increases the accountability in the food supply chain. When you know who's producing your food and you can walk onto their farm, then you know exactly how it was raised or how it was made. Buying local makes you local.
So this is low tide right now, or close to.
This is low tide. We're on spring tides, which you have on full moon and new moon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to drop out another 6 inches or something, but this is pretty much an average low water right now. At high water, there's going to be 5 or 6 feet of water on top of all of this stuff. So we have to work according to the tides.
Okay, how is it that the water comes up that substantially and these don't move?
Well, I've got rebar in between them, and it's just enough weight to hold the bags down.
Mm-hmm.
I make a point of rolling the bags out with the tidal flow.
Mm-hmm.
And once they mud up, they're not going anywhere.
All right.
Every now and then when I put fresh stuff out, something may happen and the current get under something, or it moves a little bit, then I just go back and move it back. But for the most part, once you put it out, it's going to stay. And putting them out nice and flat and smooth also is better.
Gotcha. Nothing to catch.
Nothing to catch water flow and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can't put them on hard white sand. That won't work. The UGA actually taught us how to do this. We weren't using bags like this. We were using black plastic bags. Mm-hmm. And they had us put them on that sandbar right over there, which was absolutely the worst thing to plant them in and the worst place to put them. We did manage to get some of them to live because we had to work them a lot. But we found out if you put them on white sand, they impact in and they won't live well. So we learned a lot of ways to kill clams, and then we just started doing the other stuff. But we couldn't have done it without UGA getting us started. And and that was back around 97.
When I see some kind of bivalve out and about, how do I know that it's alive and I can take it and eat it?
For the most part, you probably shouldn't, because we have very limited amount of approved waters or public picking grounds.
Okay.
So, and it may not be approved waters. It doesn't mean it's necessarily not safe. It just means it hasn't been tested, so you know it's safe. You know, the placemats that I have in the restaurants, they show all the approved picking areas and stuff, and the public picking areas. So, as a rule of thumb, if you want shellfish, there's a couple of public picking areas you could go pick your own product, and it would be safe. But for the most people, they're better off to just go to their local retail store and check the tag and look at the product and make sure that's what they want.
Come find you and eat at the fish
Or
dock.
come find me, yeah.
All right, so these are out, and you've mentioned oysters.
We're gonna ride over there, and I'm gonna show you an oyster mound and kind of how we pick wild oysters.
Yeah, I'd love that. All right, let's go. Hi, I'm Katy Rogers. I hope you'll be right back after this message to join me.
Right now we're in Mud River.
Okay.
We're right behind Sapelo Island, and this is a state lease, and we've got oyster mounds all over this lease. We think most of these oyster mounds were originally like derelict crab traps that eventually got oysters on them, and then the oysters kept attaching to the other oysters, which is called a cohort.
Okay.
And the mounds just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And every now and then, if you look around, you'll see an old crab trap with some oysters on it. So you can kind of see how it came to be. It could have been an old tree limb floated up here or something, and oysters attached to it. But these mounds this is just a really unusual place for Georgia.
It's kind of visually stunning because I've never seen anything like it. And I would have thought, just at kind of a cursory glance, I would have thought that these were intentionally like planted here, right?
One or two are, because you have to put culch back, which is oyster shells or limbs or something. When you're harvesting wild oysters, you have to put something back for baby oysters to attach to. That's part of the law. So we do put some culch back, but really what seems to help even more than anything else is just working the beds, picking the bigger oysters out, spreading the rest of the shell, and the smaller oysters, that come off of the big oysters, spreading out the mounds, and that I think probably helps grow the mounds better than anything else.
Yeah,
But
some of them are really large, aren't they?
yeah, and most of the good oysters are around the edges. On the very top, a lot of times that's small oysters. Sometimes there's a few brown-ribbed mussels in there. They're generally not sold, but sometimes we'll take them home and eat them kind of like you would a black mussel that comes from New England. And but it's just years ago there used to be some artesian wells that kind of went between Darien and St. Catherine's Island. There was a ballast pile back behind us on the intercoastal. When I was a teenager, there was like a 4-inch steel pipe, and it was an artesian well that flowed all the time. So if you're out in your boat messing around and you wanted some fresh water, you could just go up to the artesian well.
Wow.
But I think most of those have dried up now because the water tables have lowered. And when I was shrimping back in the 70s and 80s, there was an underground river that came out right there at the north end of Blackbeard in the mouth of the Sound, and at dead low water, you could see that water boiling up from that underground river.
Wow.
Just the natural things around here, the wildlife, the birds, the oyster catchers, and there's just there's a lot of migratory birds that come through here at certain times of the year, going to Canada to nest and then turn around and going back to Florida. We've got white pelicans. They didn't used to come up here, and now we've got quite a few, and some of them are residents, and they stay up here all year. Just really beautiful birds.
Hi, I'm Katy Rogers. I hope you'll be right back after this message to join me.
This really is a unique environment.
It really is. I've never seen anything like it. And you get to work here regularly. This is your place.
It's a pretty good office on a good day. When the sand gnats are out, or it's 40 degrees and you've got orders to pull, it's tough. It can be tough.
Yeah.
But it's all in it. Over there on Sapelo is one of the old houses. I think it was built probably in the 1800s. I think it was one of the old plantations. The locals call it chocolate. I think it was probably chocolat or something. It was a French word. And then there's further down, there's one of the, I think, largest shell rings that they know of. It's huge, and that's where the Indians were eating all the oysters, and they just made a big round ring. I think it may be like 100 yards across or something.
Oh, wow.
It's really, really huge. But that's all state, and it's in federal property, mostly on Sapelo. I think it's mostly state. Blackbeard on the other side is mostly federal, and it's all protected. There's a community on Sapelo, a small community, and the University of Georgia has a marine extension place where they do some research over there. But Georgia coast is protected to a large degree. We've got a few barrier islands that are developed, but most, I'd say at least half of them are protected in one way or the other. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to have the development that South Carolina has or Florida has. it's just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have bridges to any islands except for Savannah, St. Simon's, Jekyll.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 3 islands we've got bridges to, Tybee up at Savannah. So, so our environments should stay in a good shape if we, pay attention to our environmental laws and regulations and stuff.
It's really beautiful out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you ever just go up and grab some oysters for lunch?
I do, and we're fixing to do that right now.
All right. Hi, I'm Katy Rogers. I hope you'll be right back after this message to join me.
Backroads Sports Television Network, the location to find rural high school sports. Go to our website today at backroadsports.tv.
So why buy local? Why make the effort to get up on a Saturday morning and go find producers in your area? It circulates a higher percentage of your money back through your community. It supports local jobs, local growers and farmers. It increases the accountability in the food supply chain. When you know who's producing your food and you can walk onto their farm, then you know exactly how it was raised or how it was made. Buying local makes you local.
All right, so what am I looking at? Because this is like nothing I've ever seen.
This is what we would call an oyster mound. And remember I mentioned oysters growing on top of oysters?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. When I pull that up, there's a dead oyster down there, or a shell. The old timers will call that the root.
Okay.
And then you'll have an oyster that's grown on top of that, and another oyster's grown on top of that, and another oyster's on top of this.
How do you know when you get to the alive ones?
Well, you can see the white lip on them.
Okay.
And actually that one just fell out. That one's a little small. And what you do is you break this apart and you just spread the beds out. And then you take a hammer, knock the dead shell off, and then we would probably put that in the basket. And you just keep working around the oyster beds. See, there's a dead oyster right there.
Mm-hmm.
Take that and knock the dead shell off. You've got some small oysters. See, there's a little cohort.
Mm-hmm.
You can break it off where it can keep living. And there's another small oyster on that shell. You break that off. You can't get all of the small oysters off, but you get as many as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you just keep going around the oyster mounds. And as you're spreading these oysters out, it helps the mound to grow.
I see that.
So
It looks like something else has been up in here pulling some of these out. Am I wrong? See how some of these are pulled up?
Somebody like me might have been through here a while back. And but when you're looking, you can see the big white lips, on some of the bigger shells. And you have to be really careful because these shells are really sharp.
I can see that.
And
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Look at that. All right. Are you gonna have one with me?
Yeah. I'm trying to reach down here and get another one. These things grow pretty tight. Yeah.
Look at the size of these oysters.
Yeah.
How, any idea how old something this size is?
It's probably only a couple of years old. They're not that old.
Yeah, cheers. That is salty.
Really salty. You very seldom get salt content in a oyster in a restaurant.
That's true.
Not that salty. I think last time I checked the salinity, it was probably 29 parts per thousand, which is really close to seawater.
Is that a thing you check regularly?
Occasionally, mostly because I want to know when I'm bringing seed in, they're grown in a certain
Shell.
fiber.
There you go. Fiber. It's probably some sort of calcium or something.
Yeah, calcium's good for you. So I check it when I'm planting clams and stuff, because I don't want to bring in, you know, seed that comes out of a low salinity and put them in a high salinity if I can help it. But
Will that shock them or kill them? Or?
It can, but you can go around these mounds and you could probably pick 10 or 15 bushels of oysters just going around this one mound. And then the next year, all of this stuff that you scattered out and all those smaller oysters would be big enough and you could go do it again.
Have another one on there. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, it supports a lot of wildlife, like oyster catchers. You know, they're birds that got, they're really pretty birds that got orange beaks, and when the water's coming up and the oysters are just starting to open up to feed, they'll grab that oyster.
There's a crab right there.
Yep. Yep,
I'm watching
crab.
fish down here, and then a crab skitters across.
Little stone crab.
Yeah, a little stone crab.
But yeah, that's why working them is just spreading these oysters out. They're so thick, and that's why they're blade oysters, is they're reaching up, trying to get to the food source. And then small oysters attached to them, and they're growing up. So that's how the mounds grow. Just one oyster attaching to another.
I'm actually, now that I'm sitting still and watching, there's so much stuff moving in here. I mean, there's not just crabs and fish, there's little stuff skittering around here, and I can't even tell what half of it is. It's a lot of life right here.
There's a lot of life in these marshes. I mean, there really is.
Wow.
There's probably some fiddler crabs, you know, up in the top. I see the holes up there. I know there's some fiddler crabs up in the mud.
Charlie, thanks so much for taking us out here.
Well, I'm glad that y'all found your way to Georgia.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys could come along. This is really neat. I hope you get a chance to go exploring like this a little bit. And I'm gonna take a lot of pictures while we're out here. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Katy on the Farm, where we've gotten to explore the Georgia coast with Captain Charlie Phillips from Sapelo Sea Farms and Phillips Seafood, and from the Fish Dock Restaurant. So Charlie, thank you so much for showing us around and for teaching us so much about what you do. We appreciate you, and we want to invite you to come back next week for another episode of Katy on the Farm.